Greetings and welcome to the workshop on Next Generation LMS for OBE. I am Mirabelle Lee, Marketing VP of Mark Team, and the moderator for this session. Our speaker, Dr. Mark, he's a professor at Ghana University. He has an extensive tenure of experience in the education sector. He's also the CEO for I am Mirabelle Lee, Marketing VP of Mark Team, and the moderator for this session. Our speaker, Dr. Mark, he's a professor at Ghana University. He has an extensive tenure of experience in the education sector. He's also the CEO for I am Mirabelle Lee, Marketing VP of Mark Team, and the moderator for this session. Our speaker, Dr. Mark, is a professor at Ghana University. He has an extensive tenure of experience in the education sector. He's also the CEO for I am Mirabelle Lee, Marketing VP of Mark Team, and the moderator for this session. Our speaker, Dr. Mark, is a professor at Ghana University. He has an extensive tenure of experience in the education sector. He's also the CEO for I am Mirabelle Lee, Marketing VP of Mark Team, and the moderator for this session. Our speaker, Dr. Mark.
Maribel, I think I'm hearing a recall from message.
Yeah, correct. Somehow it doesn't.
So the CEO Maribel, I think I'm hearing a recall from message.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, Maribel may want to try to turn off the sound to the vertex. I think you have two of them on. Vertex and Zoom. If you turn off the sound to the vertex, then we will have a recall. Maribel, I think I'm hearing a recall.
Yeah, correct.
Maribel may want to try to turn off the sound to the vertex. I think you have two of them on. Vertex and Zoom. If you turn off the sound to the vertex, then we will have a recall. Maribel, I think I'm hearing a recall. Maribel may want to try to turn off the sound. Everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to some of you. And I'm actually at a local time of 1 o'clock in the morning. And so this session is about transformational education using technology and the challenge that we face and benefit. And more specific, I'll be focusing on the next generation LMS for outcome-based education. Now, I'm not really sure if you're facing any audio issue that we faced earlier. If you do, please be patient and then just and the tab will resolve as we move forward. And so if any questions, please feel free to let me know. And this session is a workshop session, it's 2 hours long. So my intention for the first hour focus on the concept and the rationale behind why we're looking into the next generation of LMS, the learning management system. And then the next hours, we'll focus more on to the actual demo of the system, then we'll just do the job for you. why are we even looking into the next generation of LMS? And what's wrong with the current existing ARM system that we currently use in the system? Now, to do that, for this talk, mostly focus on this topic. Okay, so we're looking to the overall needs for why we're looking to the LMS 3.0. It's meant by 3.0. Okay, and that basically means that the existing system that you may be using are 20 years old. You're looking at LMS 1.0, 2.0, which is more advanced. Also focus on this topic. Okay. We're looking to the overall needs for why we're looking to the LMS 3.0. We still have audio issue by 3.0. Okay, and that audio issue seems to be stopping right now, so let me move on. Okay, so when it comes to LMS 3.0, we are effectively looking into a system and not only taking care of the day-to-day teaching activity or to facilitate the teaching and learning, but we're also looking into one more component, that is the student learning outcome, and whether our existing system allow us to track, monitor, or even to manage the learning outcomes. Okay, so the topic we're looking to those would be whether the alignment of your learning outcome or the course outcome you're teaching the course would align with the outcome-based educations, and whether those systems that you set up allow you to do one step further for accreditations. Okay. Decide which model learning makes sense when it comes to automations or to facilitate the next versions or next generation of the learning management system. Now, first, let's look into why we look into this LMS 3.0. I think for the past 2 years, we all went through very unusual situations. There's a pandemic. That pandemic pretty much changed the way we teach, in particular in higher ed. In fact, throughout the entire education system in K-12. The students, all of a sudden, the traditional classroom-based teaching will not necessarily be sufficient to handle the pandemic situations. We all get into the online teaching. Okay, even online teaching itself, they will face a bunch of issues. And students also begin to realize that the learning and teaching doesn't necessarily have to be in a physical space. Okay, so they open the possibility. So as a result, we're also looking to a variety of teaching pedagogy, okay, and different way to handle the situations. Now, next question, and fueled by the industry 4.0, the current ongoing for the entire world. So the new skill set that are needed for a new workforce, they're needed for industry 4.0. You're looking at AI, deep learning, blockchain, okay, all are possible now because of the adoption of 5G technology. And as a result, so the virtual learning, okay, even the new skill set are different, okay, in the workplace. Now the question is, based on our traditional way of teaching conducted currently, we'll be able to produce the student that will be able to meet the new skill set demanded by the Industry 4.0. Okay, so the Industry 4.0 pretty much looking into students more into a skill sets needed. So that whole pedagogy that we currently have, probably need to shift and rethink or reimagine the way of curriculum being structured and how the teaching needs to be conducted in order to focus on the proper skills that the student really need. Okay, that itself is one whole set of discussion that we need to look into it. But the question now is, would our existing learning management system really sufficient allow us to only doing the teaching in class? Okay, do we need more? Okay, the question, of course, the answer is we need more. Only the technology to handle the day-to-day teaching in the classroom is no longer sufficient, because we're looking into how to really measure the student learning. By doing so, we're also measuring how well the teaching really taking place. So we need one more component. There's outcome assessment. In fact, throughout this whole morning, this whole days of workshop that you've been through. And a lot of topic and focusing on what is OBE, the general concept, the basic principle. In fact, there's one workshop that talked a little while on how to bring the principle of OBE into practice. Okay, we've been through those. Okay, so I think at this time, you probably have a very good idea if you've been to those workshops, what OBE really is. Now, for that, okay, we need to have a different system that can handle those. So maybe it's time to say goodbye to our existing RMS. Really welcome the new system called the OAS, the Outcome Assessment System. Now, what's the difference between the Outcome Assessment System and outcome-based education? Now, outcome-based education is education based on the outcome that OBE concept. Even if you successfully implemented OBE, we still need to have a system that allows us to track whether your OBE implementations is actually meeting the target that you intend to do. So what does it entail? Now, this image here pretty much details what would be the overall view of the outcome assessment system. On the right-hand side is the assessment framework for the outcome assessment system, including the curriculum mapping, which focusing on your curriculum design. Also look into the FCAR methodology, which is the faculty course assessment report. When it comes to assessment, okay, there are two major assessment models. One, I call it the GSS model, which is named after the Korea Roger assessment model, which is more traditional. The other one is called the FCAR assessment model. John Astor will be the father of FCAR methodology. So we expand the FCAR methodology and further to include a whole bunch of other components to make the automations of the assessment possible. Now, you can think of FCAR assessment model would be the enhanced version of GSS model, which we'll talk a little bit more later. So on the right hand side, you can see the entire circle of the component essential for the outcome assessment system. That's really needed in order for us to track whether our teaching makes sense, meeting our target, whether the student learning takes place, the meeting the student outcome they wanted to have. Now, what actually included in this OAS? Now, this is all the key components included in the outcome assessment system. Now, the blue color modules are the learning management system. For example, we have like LMS. You may have like stream feature that allow you to do a live video streaming. You may even have Meet, just like the Zoom-like feature that allow you to do the virtual learning, or the online content ordering that allow you to do the actual online design of your courses or delivery. But all these things here will still be the learning management system. What the next generation LMS, which I call the LMS 3.0, is built on top of this learning management system and expand it further to include all these components on the left, which all combine together, and we call the outcome assessment system. Now, the component on the left are focusing on the assessment, which two of them will be the direct assessment or the indirect assessment tools. Indirect assessment tool is measuring students' opinions or performance indirectly. Okay, the toolset that really needed will be called the survey. Okay, and the survey on how well they do in the class and everything else, and which will demo a little bit later how this really works. Now, the one on the right is direct assessment. When it comes to direct assessment, we're pretty much looking into the student work, what they have done in the class. So for that to happen, effectively, we still have to rely on your existing learning management system. So that's why the OAS itself is an extension and built on top of the existing learning management system. What you have now is on the left. What we're going to have need now will be on the left. So what actually inside the OAS? So it's the whole bunch of components that you needed on top of LMS. For example, you need to have a student advising module. Okay, we not only do tracking the direct assessment that we collected from the LMS components, but we're also looking into the student advising component and see how well your management system, your student advising management system, really taking place effectively to guide students through the entire process. Okay, we also need to have the meeting minute that keeping track of whether all the meeting taking place to discuss or evaluate on all the action items they have, okay, and those tracking mechanisms, and the committee portal that allow you to have different committee, okay, for improvement analysis. And then you have the continuous improvement management system, okay, all the action items generated, how well can you feedback the system for improvement. Eventually, you need to have the evaluate portal, okay, allow the evaluate coming in, so everything go green, so allow them to look into your system and make adjustment call and whether you're meeting the standard. Now, all this thing combined together is still at the program level. So all this program level outcome assessment system, if you implement it to entire university, eventually we ask different questions. Will all this program be able to supply or roll up all the data from the bottom to the very top that allow the institution to do a self-study for institutions and see whether the entire institution as a whole meeting the mission that you set up to do so. Okay, so there'll be an entire concept of the outcome assessment system. Okay. Now, if you go back to our very basic outcome-based education principle, they focus on the clarity of focus. Okay, you need to have a clear picture of learning. Okay, that can exhibit the student performance. Eventually, you want student to demonstrate, okay, whether student can achieve the outcome. You also need to have the expand opportunity, allow you to, in your system, to give students expanded time within the system that's possible for them to complete the work. Okay. And the high expectations will be your performance that you set up for a program outcome, you filter down to your course outcome, whether those performance are at a high level that allows students to meet the standard that you're looking for. The design down is a process. So eventually, that you want to have a process that allow all individual, your faculty, to be able to implement the concept of OBE from a design down principle. That is, design down is what the OBE concept used for engineering term. We tend to use backward design process. Now, this would be the three type OBE in the history of the development of OBE up to now. The traditional OBE are focused more on the time-based curriculum. Transitional OBE focus more onto the competency, which is a little bit higher level. And the transformational OBE will be the next level OBE that we try to achieve. Okay, the focus more on the context in your system, where you're guiding the system through, whether you're actually meeting a live example in the workplace. So there will be the ultimate. But I believe most of the university are either in between the traditional OBE, or some of them are in the transitional OBE. The majority of us will be inside these two areas. It doesn't really matter which area you're in. Once you engage into the OBE pathway to guide a student through to have a meaningful outcome-based education, eventually we still need to ask questions. How do you know that you're actually getting that? That's where the OAS comes in. Now, these are some of the, this backward design is a very well-known engineering process. Okay, it's a very systematic approach. Okay, the concept is the same as the design down principle, but it's a different term. Okay, so basically you are looking into what would be the need for the outcome. Now let's go back to the Industry 4.0. Okay, so in this case, if we were to try to bring your entire school system education framework to meet the need of the Industry 4.0 in the future, the workplace needed, then then you need to define a set of the outcome. What are intended outcomes that really allow the student to meet the workforce they needed in the future? Once you define those, then you have the top level, okay, objective or target. Then you flow backward to figure out what will be a corresponding program outcomes for the programs. But each program may have different set of program outcomes. Once you have the program outcomes, then you define what will be the cost outcome. So if this flow down, that's called design down, also so-called the backward design. So you basically define the desired result. Okay, there will be an outcome they're looking for, okay, for a student to achieve by the time they graduate. And then you figure out what will be the acceptable evidence or student learning skill set that they need. Then based on those, then you plan what will be the learning experience and instructions the needed or activity needed for the class in order to support eventually to quantify that you're actually meeting the outcome. So backward design is looking at the result and then figure out what will be the activity needed for the class. But when it comes to assessment, we still need to figure out, once you implement all this, how do you know that you're actually meeting the target? That's where the OAS comes in. Our existing RMS will not be able to do the job if they're not tracking the outcome in this manner. Now, this is another paper I think is worth reading. Okay, it's talking about the ABC of engineering educations. Okay. So A stands for ABET, B is from taxonomy, C is cooperative learning. Okay, so that's ABC. And this paper brings up one key concept, which I really like. We all know Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, in particular, Bloom's cognitive domain, which focus on the learning cycle. In fact, can happen any level, from freshman year to senior year. In any cycle of learning, it focuses on knowledge, and then comprehensions, and then the applications, and then later on become the analysis, synthesis, and evaluations. So those are skill sets the student will learn as go through the cognitive domain of learning. Now, in particular, when it comes to teaching, most of the instructor, most I would say that they want the student to master the high level of thinking skill. We all want to have that. But if you will look into more carefully what they have done in the class, you must have found out that most of the lecture or the homework that is designed for the class are focusing mostly on the level 3, which is the application. In other words, they design a problem, ask students to solve a problem. The problem we've already found already, just ask to solve the problem, or they analyze a problem. So most likely only focus on it here. But high level thinking is actually more into the synthesis evaluations. So that's why most of the school or engineering programs, they find that when they get to senior year, when it comes to work on the senior design, they're having tough time in senior design to figure out how to do a proper design and synthesis and some unknown of the design, and eventually evaluating the design whether they make sense or meet the target. Mostly because in the curriculum, all the teaching are focused mostly on the applications or analysis, not really that much on the synthesis and evaluations. So this is one thing that we can take note. And so we design our curriculum, which really think about how to do this. So that's what the OAS comes in. Now, when it comes to OAS, as I mentioned earlier, there are two assessment models. One is the GSS model, and one is the FCA assessment model. In this talk, we only focus on the FCA assessment model. Why we're choosing this? Now, FCA assessment model based on the concept of plan, teach, and then evaluate. So you need a plan ahead of time before a semester begins. Then you teach it during the semester. At the end of the semester, you evaluating what you have taught. So this is general concept FCA. So based on the FCA concept, the reason we adopt FCA because FCA have been using score-based rubric system that allow us to systematically quantify the learning process in the very nicely color-coded matrix. Okay. So for example, they score between 0 to 100, anything 90% and above, classified as excellent, that's E. Then from 70 to 90, maybe something called the adequate, that's A. And then M will be the minima, will be one is called above 60 to 70 is called minima. Anything less than that is unsatisfactory. So this matrix EA and U vector is the excellent, adequate, minima, and unsatisfactory. So this is a score-based system that allows us to systematically quantify all this number together to give an indicator and see how well we're actually reaching our teaching as well as the learning. So based on that, okay, we need to roll up this data into something called the performance vector table. Then later on, we can use for analysis the result. Now, when it comes to outcome assessment, we're starting off with the top level. Remember, design now. The top level will be the program execution objective. Then the second level will be the student outcome. Now, for engineering program, ABET have defined the student a set of student outcome for most engineering programs. But the PO is unique to each of the engineering program that we each have to define what exactly we want our student to become. That's PO. So the PO and then tied to the student outcome, but we can't really measure student outcome directly, mostly because the student outcome written in such a language is so broad. So the measuring them will not be effectively if you just measure them in that manner. So we break them down further, so-called the performance indicator. So you have the SO, the next level is set of performance indicator that we need to define for each student outcome. Now the performance indicator will be uniquely defined based on your program. The SO is the same for all engineering program, but the PI they define for each program, for each SO will be very uniquely based on your program. So based on that, you have the data roll up to PI evaluations. Only after you evaluate all the PI, then the data roll up further become the high level of student outcome evaluations. Then after you have this data, only then you figure out what will be the term report at the end. Are we meeting it? Are we not meeting it? So with that, you're creating action item accordingly, and then feedback to the system, and then for continued improvement. Now, all these things here is still at the program level. Ultimately, we really want to ask, can we track individual student learning at the end based on this OS system? And the answer is yes, of course, and then we'll show you later. Now, let's look into this one chart. Okay. I'm just getting a chat messages, so it's on a technical issue. Okay. Now, when we look into the OAS, which is the LMS 3.0, so in addition to a traditional LMS system, if you look at OAS, we're looking at different things. Okay, not only we're looking at tracking the student outcome, because the amount, if you've been through any ABET accreditation before, you know that the amount of time required to prepare for the accreditation is tremendous. It's a lot of stress for every faculty because it's way too much paperwork. Okay. Now the question is, can we simplify it or even to the point of automate the entire process, at least minimally for the data collections and the data compilations? It's too time-consuming process. If we can do that, then we achieve our end goal for OAS. Now to really do that, we need to understand the concept of assessment and evaluations. From the information point of view, assessment is actually a process for us to create a process at the end of it, allow it to collect the evidence for us to analyze data. So assessment tend to flow from the top to the bottom. So top will be start from your program objective, or even from the professional organizations, or from a accredited body, the mandate will be student outcome, or even a national level from the university missions. Okay, flow down to the even with the institution level student outcome, eventually become your individual program execution objective. Now for each program, you have a set of student outcome. If it's engineering ABET, they all be the same. Okay, but from an ABET program, you further down to the set of performance indicator. Eventually, you're going to flow down to a set of courses that tie into this. Now, this is standard ABET or accreditation process. Now, another question we need to bear in mind, how would this accreditation process have anything to do with the outcome-based educations? We talked about outcome-based education initially, but now we talk about accreditation. Are they in conflict of each other? Right? You can implement outcome-based educations. It's a framework, but there are many different ways of implementing OBE. Once you figure out a way that work for your university for implementing OBE. Once you're implementing them, you still have to assess whether your implementation is effective. That's where the accreditation comes in. Now, the key thing here is how to align the OBE with the accredited process. The key is the course outcome. So the course outcome is based on the design down principle of OBE. Looking at the bigger picture first, what's the end goal that you want your student to achieve? Then, from each program, what's the end goal you want a student to become? There is your PEO. Then from there, you figure out what the student outcome and tie into your PI, eventually go to the course outcome. So this design process, you can still use the OBE suggested way of doing it. So once you design those, so the key thing is to line up the course outcome that you teach with the program outcome. Then the process of accreditations and the process of the OBE will not be in conflict. Okay, that's the bottom line. Now this assessment, information flow down. When it comes to evaluations, however, the information is just flowing back up the other way around. So you have data collected from at the course level for all the course outcomes that you teach in the class. Then from there, you need information flow back up and see how well they line up to the student outcome. Then from those data, you want to flow that further up to your PO for each program and see whether your program meeting your program objective. Of course, if you implement system-wide to entire university, for each and every program, eventually ask whether the entire university teaching meeting the university missions. So that's the evaluation process. Of course, today's workshop, we want to focus on one program and show how with this assessment process, the information flow from the top to the bottom, and how this information flow from bottom back to the top. So this assessment top to bottom, the evaluation is bottom to the top. That's what I want to achieve. Now, in order to understand that, okay, we're going to come back to the general assessment cycle. Okay, so we have our program as an objective defined. And we also have a set of student outcome defined. So that is program, the PO is unique to each program. The student outcome in general managed by your accreditation agents. So with that, we come up with a set of performance indicator that tie into your course outcome. So this part here, it looks trivial, but that is not as simple as look. The most likely go to your curriculum design, how to correlate your PI with the course outcome. Assuming that you've done that, okay, then you offer your courses and then collect the data and OBE. Once you assess the data, okay, then you need to go through a process of evaluations. Okay, you're assessing every PI, eventually come with an action item. Okay, at any given point, you can flow it back to an action plan. That this action plan can improve your course outcome or even to improve your PO. So that's the entire assessment cycle. Now, here we introduce three terminologies. The PO, let me say it one more time. PO is program execution objective at the very top level. Then SO, student outcome, in general given by your accredited agents. And PI is a performance indicator, and some school will call it KPI, key performance indicator. Same. And then eventually will be the course outcome, the course CO. So it starts from the top PO, SO, PI, and CO. So that's information flow down. But when it comes to assessment, it starts from the course outcome and flow back up. Okay, as long as the course outcome align with your PI, eventually to the student outcome, eventually to PO, then the process OBE, the process used for accreditations, they will complement each other, then OBE makes sense. Now, here we introduce tools that call eval tools, okay, which I call the Learning Management 3.0, because it's not only LMS. There's other components that the LMS do not have. For example, they track the objective evidence. Objective evidence would be the key assignment that you selected from a student's work that allow to quantify whether the student work actually allow you to meet the course outcome, which in turn to meet your performance indicator. which in turn to meet your student outcome in that level. Okay, also you have a advising system. Track whether your advising is effective enough, but that's part of the assessments. Okay, also others, like for example, the faculty development, the facility, the admin support, advisory board. Those are the others that can be tracked using eval2 as well. Important assessment evaluations. When it comes to assessment, you must have assessment plan. Okay, eval2 support that, the assessment site process, and how to evaluate on the assessment process itself. Okay, when you have an assessment plan, you must also have an evaluation plan. Okay, remember, the assessment plan is information flow down. Evaluation plan is assessment flow up. Okay, so evaluation plan, okay, it must appear definition, the action item for closure, and all things need to be tracked. Okay, those are the things that are not traditionally available in your system, LMS system. That's why we need a new system. Okay. We mentioned earlier that for this to be possible, because we're adopting FCAR methodology. FCAR stands for Faculty Cost Assessment Report. So it's based on the principle of planning, delivery, and then do the self-reflection action item for every course that you teach in your curriculum. So for planning, you must have a well-constructed process defining what are the course syllabus. Course information you're going to teach. So in the syllabus is to spell out exactly how this PI, CO, and SO, how they're related, how they map to your evidence. Okay, so that is a major chunk of the planning. If you've done this part well, then during the teaching delivery, the Toolset must take over. That when you select a key assignment, then at this point, we need to form something called the course portfolio. In the past, we have been using student portfolio as one of the ways to assess whether the student meeting the outcome. But after 5-6 years of implementing student portfolio, we realized that may not necessarily be a good way of doing it. The student portfolio are by design are done by students. So their objective is meant to create a portfolio is only for that purpose. So may not have anything to do with your program assessment at all. So student portfolio would not necessarily make sense. So course portfolio, on the other hand, are constructed by the faculty. The faculty who is the one who's going to teach. So they know that the objective of the teaching they try to achieve. At the end, they also know exactly how well the teaching needs to be done and what activity need to be conducted in the teaching cycle. So from there, the faculty should know which piece of teaching or of assignment they hand out are intended for what type of measurement they try to achieve. So that's why the teaching delivery, we want to form the course portfolio, not student portfolio. Once that is done, okay, at the end of the term, we want faculty to have a chance to look into their teaching and do a self-reflection and creating action item. Okay, whether based on the summative, formative evaluations, but they want to have this kind of tool set allow them to create an action item for improvement purposes. So that needs to be done. The question is how. Okay. I think that's not chance. Now, let's look at to the top level view, the curriculum mapping matrix. This diagram here is so-called the curriculum outcome mapping. One term. Okay, we're looking into these are the courses that you offer for the term. Then these are the SO is student outcome. These are student outcome that we have, okay, for the program. And for each student outcome, there will be a corresponding set of performance indicator. In this example, SO1, there will be PI11, 12, 13, 14. So the 4 performance indicator associated with the student outcome. Now here, the one grants, we're dividing our courses into 3 categories. Yellow flag indicating introductory courses, R indicating reinforced courses, and M indicating the master level courses. So when you design a curriculum for your system, remember we design down or backward design. It's based on your performance indicator, the program education objective first. What's your target for your student after they graduate? From Then you define a set of skill set of competency the student want to achieve. Now, based on that skill set, you can ask yourself, for all the courses to offer from freshman year all the way to senior year, a different level. For a freshman year or sophomore year, it tend to be the introductory level courses. Sophomore year to junior year tend to be the reinforced courses. The master level courses will tend to be the junior year and senior year. So the three different level of courses that you define, they're focusing on different level of skill set. Of course, we mentioned earlier for content domain, you can have like knowledge, comprehensions, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluations. Okay, let's look at content domain only. You can look at other domain also, but look at content domain. Now, for a freshman year, we tend to focus on knowledge. Of course, all this content domain take place in every level of the courses, freshman year all the way to senior year. But when it comes to design of the curriculum, we tend to focus on, okay, let's say for example, freshman level courses, we focus on the knowledge, measurement of knowledge. Second year, focus on measurement comprehensions. For third year, you measure on the ability for application analysis. Then the fourth year, focus on the synthesis evaluations. So that's why the master level courses at the M level tend to focus on the synthesis evaluations. They eventually, that's what we want them to have. Okay. Now the difference between, now this is where the difference between the GS assessment model and the FCAS assessment model. I mentioned the two major assessment models. Now the GS assessment model focus on measuring or identify how well your program working based on the master level courses. Mostly because most of schools don't necessarily have an OS system. They have a learning management system. So that will be insufficient to do all this outcome assessment system tracking. So too much paperwork. So instead, they're focusing only on the master level courses. Now the good and bad, the good thing is it's really lightweight. So if you meet, you only focus on master level courses, collect data only in master level courses. Then you're taking, even with that, for a very large school, there's still amount to a huge amount of data that you need to analyze and compare. So that is how it's ton of work. So that's why you focus on master level courses for GSS model. I tend to collect all this data and they do an averaging effect and looking on the averaging effect of the student learning. That's the GSS model. Now for FCAS model, we expand even further, including the collecting data not only on the master level courses, but also on the R reinforcement level courses and introductory level courses. The reason we do that, if focusing on master level courses, if you're meeting the mark, you're okay. What happens if you don't? If you don't meet the outcome, let's say for one of them, then you will not know exactly where's the root cause that causing us to not able to meeting this particular outcome. Let's say this one will be PI22. You do not know. But you have only information at the master level courses. That's why we suggest that focusing on, we collect data not only on the master level courses, we also collect data on the R and the I. Okay, with that, if anything happens, we can trace the issue could very well be at the introductory level courses or the reinforcement courses, then manifest itself to the master level courses. So that's why FCAS model allows us to do all this. Now this is a snapshot on the planning part. Okay, we're planning for FCAS model. Now FCAS model is very big on planning. Let's take this simple example. We define E, A, and U. E is excellent, 90% and above. A is adequate, 75 and above, and M is 60 and above, on standard change below 60. Of course, E and U is based on your system. It can scale them according to what you need, based on your program. Now, in this example here, we're looking at 3 student outcomes. Student outcome 1, 2, and 3. Let's say student outcome 1. Okay, in this case, we associate student outcome 1, align them with one of the student outcome. So for example, demonstrate application, apply math, ability to formulate engineering problem, solving the problem is one of the student outcome. Okay, then the key assignment that you identify, which key assignment in your course design, okay, which one that you think that can do this, that's called key assignment. Then we also advocate that you're creating a justification why this key assignment is selected. So this key assignment selected, you answer the question of why being selected, what actually inside this key assignment, and how it's being used to quantify that you're meeting this outcome. So those are the key concepts for the planning stage. Once you have that, the FCA assessment at the end of the term, you can based on the EMU vector. You create EMU vector at the end. Now this part here is the PVT, is the performance vector table. The consolidated data, the flow up from the FCA all the way to the program level is more specifically only applied to the PI 11 in this particular example. And PI 11 corresponds to one of the components of SO. So then from here you can tell in this case there are two courses, 351 and 358. Okay, color coded. Okay, one would be reinforced level, one is master level courses. Ideally, we want to have introductory, reinforced, and mastery. In reality, you may not even be able to do that in your curriculum, but you should try as much as you could as a minimum with the master level courses, and then try to put in the reinforced level courses, introductory level courses that allow you to measure or collect evidence, that allow you to measure the particular PI. In this example, they also weighted differently. Master level course weighted 5, reinforced weighted 2, introductory weighted 1. So we penalize more if you couldn't meet the master level courses, and less if you're looking into the reinforced and the introductory. So with this, it's color coded. Green, you exceed the expectations. Yellow and red, you have concern area problematic. White, they mean you're in the comfort zone. So based on this, in this particular example, okay, you have an overall average of 4.41, for example, no unsatisfactory. So in this case, so we are saying that we are meeting with a scale of 0 to 5. Okay, so the 4.4 multiplied by 2 give 8.88%. So we know that this costs roughly about 88%. But for E, we want it to be 90% and above. So this is still A within the comfort zone, A factor. So then it's very clear in this case you have master level courses meeting the expectations. Even in the lower level courses, they are doing very well. So overall, we exceed the expectation in this case. You have discussions, everything else. Now, once you have that, you roll for the data further up to the top level. In fact, and it makes sense at this point that I'll go straight to the toolset and introduce you how this thing needs to be done. Okay, we're looking to curriculum, the FCA, and the raw data to PVT, and the SO eventually term summary. Okay. Now here, I illustrate a toolset called eval2, which I call the MS 3.0. It's a role-based system. When you log in, if you are faculty, you see on the faculty office. If you're a chair, you see the chair office. If you're admin, you see admin office. So of course, for the demo purpose, I've turned it on. So, and then for student, you see another tab called My Desk, which is student desk. Now the default My Community, My Survey site are the common portal for all to access. Now, the learning management system that you have is focusing on faculty office and student desk. OAS, adding another dimensions, there will be your chair office. Now, before I go straight into the OAS, okay, let's first look into the faculty office, the LMS first. Now, the concept design here is for every course that they have. Let's say we go to Service 2. And the concept is to set it up before you manage. Okay, let's go to setup. And let's see how this thing can satisfy our learning management system first. What exactly is needed for the new learning management system that we have beside OS? Okay, so in the lesson setup, for example, okay, you could have, we're all very familiar with learning management system. Those are standard features for the lesson, assignment, online assignment, rubric. For example, they're pretty much standard. But for the advanced learning management system, besides the standard one, we're looking for other thing that you may have. For example, can we do video gallery? Can we do video link? Can we do a content, which is the content authoring? Can we do flipbook? For example, let's do a flipbook. Okay, so these are the flipbook that are uploaded. So what is flipbook anyway? It pretty much is a lesson that you created for class, but it's a more fancy way of doing it. I think this is the future of the book, electronic book that we have in the future. Let's say, for example, you have created all this flipbook that you uploaded, then this would be a lessons, everything else. Okay, so let's look at the 12 rule. If you open it up, let's say you selected this. Okay, I selected some of them. So I enter some of them here. So let's click this one, for example. That's flipbook. The content of which, as long as creating your PDF, then this one here, we're creating a very nice lecture that you have for the class. Okay, so this tool set, we designed it so that the instructor can create the lecture series in the form of a book. Eventually, they can form an actual book for publications. That was the intent. Now, besides flipbook, what else do you have? Okay, would be the video gallery. Video gallery is some of the video. You can always post video they created and post on YouTube. Then you go back to the YouTube link. You can always do that. The problem with that is the moment you post your lesson to YouTube, you pretty much lose your intellectual property. Okay, if you want to preserve intellectual property, we created this something called a private YouTube. That inside these eval tools, that you can upload this video is only available inside the toolset. All the user inside the toolset, you can publish them. They won't be out. It won't be available to the outside public world. So that preserves your intellectual property in that manner. Okay, let's say you create this, upload it. Okay, then you're done with that. Okay, so that will be one of these. Okay, let's say you click this one, you create it. Then you have a live stream of video. Now, if you prefer to go back to the traditional video on YouTube, you can always do that. So if you've done that, then you just have to create a video link. And this is a video link that I post a video to YouTube. You just need to create a link. And once you've done that, then it appears here, a different icon. So this is on the public YouTube. This is actually on the public YouTube. Click on this, and that becomes standard YouTube video, live streaming. Okay, so these are more advanced feature LMS that we're expecting that you currently have with the system. Now, on top of that, we're also looking into the virtual lesson and classroom. That's where the toolsets comes in. And because of the pandemic, so the virtual teaching is pretty much one of the standard or hybrid process of teaching. So here, I created a link already for the virtual sessions, or to just join. Now, the process of creating is quite simple. You edit, you define the date, the time, and the topic, and then choose all the classes, a student in the class. One nice thing about this, that the student don't have to worry about find where will be your Zoom link. Okay, so it'll be available, and student can only log into the system to see them. So they also create another level of security. Now when they join, need to turn off the audio, otherwise you're gonna have echo. So effectively, you can upload your lecture ahead of time. This is quite similar to Zoom. The only thing different is this big blue button is actually designed for the classroom purposes. There are many features. It's very well designed system. It's open source. Okay, so for example, you could creating or anything you want on the screen. So it's a very flexible system designed for classroom purposes. And just one thing I like about this system here. So we just went through a very fast pace of advanced level learning management system. There's one more thing that I'd like to show is content authoring. Now, content authoring, this thing generated with the design, for example. This is by creating your content for your classroom teaching delivery. Okay, I created one simple one, pretty much similar to your PowerPoint. You can also say, well, I can use PowerPoint, but this actually do more than PowerPoint. This is still a PowerPoint, not much difference. Here, you can actually create an interactive lecture. So you can create two classifications. You can put, okay, this is answer, and or this is answer. Go to this interactive movement in the teaching. At the end of it, you can check whether the answer is correct or not correct. So this is all wrong. It's still wrong. Like it all right. So they allow you to do this. Now, how to create this type of lecture? Now we are adopting something called the 30, which is another great open source tool. So let's look into this one here, for example. Okay. This is where you can add in all the Toolset. Okay, the one I just done earlier is called the interactive Toolset. Now you can, there are many examples you can do. Okay, so let me just try one. Let's say this one. Okay, they give you example, they can view. The online documentation for this toolset is very rich. For example, you try to create an interactive for decision tree type of lecture. So this simple example, you have a chicken, a fox, and the meat. They want to take it over to their side river. So let's say take a chicken first. Next. Bring back anything. Yeah, let's bring back nothing. And we try to bring over. Let's say bring back, we'll bring the fox, the meat. And we'll bring back the chicken. Then you say, I'm going to bring the fox this time. Then you can bring back nothing. And now you can take the chicken over. Go overview. So this is another type of lecture that you can create. So that's online content authoring. But all this that I just demonstrated is still only for learning management system. Okay, we may call the learning management 2.0. But we're looking at is 2.0. We're looking at faculty office, student desk. Those are for the learning management system. Now, when it comes to OAS, okay, where is OAS? So let's go back to this class, page 2. Now, we say setup before you manage. Let's go to setup. Assignment setup, this is where the faculty design the course. we're going to take a small break in about 5 more minutes, and then so that you can get your thought. If you have any questions, and please post them, and I'm more than happy to address them accordingly. So now begin to look into the OS features. Now, what does it really mean from a faculty perspective for OS? So remember, we're setting up before we manage. So let's look into the assignment setup. Now we went to a lesson setup for all the advanced feature of the LMS. When it comes to OAS, okay, this one here is a snapshot of all the assignments that I created for my class. If you notice that it's only about few assignments that are being selected as a key assignment that allow me to quantify I'm meeting my course outcome 1, and it also allow me to meet the PI14, which correspond to the student outcome 1. So this one here, this assignment is meeting the course outcome 2 and meeting the PI24, eventually meeting the student outcome 2. And this one is meeting the course outcome 1, and the course outcome 1, and then okay, so that's how we map them. But let's look into one of them, but in particular, that's like this one. Let's go to edit. Now the main difference is it's not key assignment, and what you're really looking at with traditional LMS. Now for OAS, we need to have this additional components. That is for the assignment that the faculty have to teach or design for the class. We ask one more question: if this assignment is designed that you want to use it for as a key assignment that allow them to map the course outcome, or you have any mapping to the PI1 or any performance indicator. Okay, for PI SO1, there are 4 performance indicators, so you can define whether key assignment is designed, whether it can map to course outcome 1 or PI14. Now, in general, the general rule for the past so many years that we have done, you could certainly use one key assignment to map more than one student outcome. You can do that. But we find out that later on, when you do your evaluations, it becomes difficult to quantify if there's any issue. That where is the problem is. So better off that you have only one key assignment per PI they try to map, or per student or per course outcome. Then that way, if anything wrong, you know what would be the real issue. Okay. Sometimes it's not possible. So end up that you still have to be one assignment that met into multiple key assignment. If that's the case, for that key assignment, you have to have different way of measuring that specific PI. Okay, a little bit more complicated, but can be done. Okay, so that's a concept. In fact, there will be as much as the faculty can do. Design the assignment, define the mapping, and then the faculty also had to enter the justifications. Now, where to get a justification from? Remember, we do a planning first, and then cost delivery. What we're looking at now is the cost delivery portion of it. Now, for the justifications, the planning part will be cost information setup. Okay, if you look into, this is where the planning is supposed to take place first. We added another sections for the cost and program assessment criteria. Okay, so the cost assessment criteria for EMU for all the cost outcome 1, 2, 3, and 4, and how do you map to the student outcome and the PI and your justifications. So these are the justifications. If you plan it ahead of time, you enter all this information. When you create a key assignment, it's very simple thing to cut and paste, and that's it. So as far as instructor is concerned, most of the work, upfront work, are done on the planning part. Cost information setup. Once you set up, the rest of them become rather mechanic. Maribel, I think maybe now is a good time to take a break for 5-10 minutes, and then we can see if there are any questions from the audience that we can address them accordingly. don't hear any more echo on my side. Do you still hear echo on your side? Okay. Now, if there's no echo, there's no question from the audience. So that continues. Okay. So let me continues and then see if there are more questions. If there are any questions from the audience, then I can pause and then address them accordingly. Earlier, okay, we stopped at the locations where what does OS learning mean for faculty? Now, for faculty, it must mean that you need to plan ahead of time. So, in other words, that we're actually creating an assessment framework, okay, in addition to the toolset. That when it comes to OAS, we're no longer looking at the simple, okay, do as you wish and your classroom setup. We're actually looking to an overall coordination, some very top level of your curriculum design based on your program objective, and then implement with the OBE concept design down, eventually down to your course level. From the course level, you define course outcome. Of course, in this case, we have to make sure you align your course outcome with the PI and the SO so that your accreditation process and OBE are in sync with each other. Okay. With that, from a faculty perspective, the harder work to do is just planning. Planning have to know exactly what the course outcome they try to achieve. Course outcome, they design back what activity needed in order to support the course outcome. That allows them to achieve the course outcome. Okay, so when they've done all those planning, now with the Toolset taking over all the maintain work and the tedious work. In this example here, for example, okay, the faculty define these are my 1, homework 7, homework 9 will be the one I want to use to measure the course outcome 1, course outcome 2. Okay, in fact, in this example here, using more than two set of assignment to map to the course outcome 1 and PR11, but it's for PR14. Okay, in this example. So the mapping is done. The justification we just cut and paste into it. Okay, and then the Toolset will automatically compile all this data for you. That's where you save the time. So instead of faculty can focus more on the teaching and the planning. So let the Toolset do the job for you to compile, to form the course portfolio for you. Okay, so at the end of the term, when you get done with this, at the end of the term, okay, remember, beginning of the term is setting up the course info. This is the planning part. When the plan part is done, during the term, you're setting up the assignment, the forming course portfolio. At the end of the term, you're looking at your FCAR. Okay, so this is end of the term. Now this one here, because it's ongoing, so there's not that much good data to look at. So let me show you one past term data. Show exactly the full effect of the FCAR. This would be the typical FCAR result at the end of the term. So you're looking at your, in the past, we actually do this thing by paper and pen. So with this Toolset, we pretty much automate the entire process. So we have the course descriptions. This is the report that faculty had to generate at the end of the term with course descriptions. The course outcome, this is indirect measurements. So you have course outcome defined at the beginning of the term. And the course outcome will be automatically flow into, we have the survey module. So the survey module will be, we deploy the survey module at the end of the term. Students can do the survey for the class. So there's no more paper survey. And faculty also have a chance to come in here and do their own evaluation of how well they think they teach. So we collect this data here and see the perception from faculty and also perception from the students and see how well they match. The reason we're doing this, because even though ABET are not that much in favor of the indirect measurement data, but we believe the indirect assessment data is part of data that we should not just simply discredit them. Okay, the only question is at what point we think that the student response is a valid one. So that's why we're collecting this data over here. If for this class, if the perception from a faculty and the perception from the students for the entire class, if they're very close, it pretty much means that the faculty teach with the thing that they teach. The student also perceive what students teach are in line with what they think. Then the rest of the questionnaire in the survey would be a very good source of information to tell you more about what needs to be improved for the class. That's why we're collecting this data, the indirect assessment data. If the perceptions are very close to each other, then when it comes to evaluations, we look further down into that specific course outcome or course access survey from a class and try to extract more information out from a class and see whether those information are helpful in helping the faculty, the instructor, for improvement in the next cycle of teaching. Now, what actually included FCAR? We also have grade distributions. So if you look into this example here, we have like 1A, 5B, 2A minus, 1B, 4B, and 2F. Now, when it comes to assessments, we do not count for the students who are failed the class. So then for the assessment itself, we're only taking care of the student who passed, not the one who failed. For a very simple reason, the student who failed will have to take the class again next time. So as a result, we do not want to count them into this cycle of the assessments. They'll retake the class themselves next time anyway, same class. Then we also look into the O action item and the reflections. Now, before faculty have the right of reflection of the class. Now, before the right of reflections, there's certain format that we want them to follow through. Okay, then they also need to generate the action item. But before they do that, they need to review, for the cost outcome assessment. Okay, remember based on EMU, this is cost outcome 1, cost outcome 2, cost outcome 3. Then each one of them, you know exactly is homework 3, homework 4, homework 7, and these are the justifications. And this will be corresponding EMU vector after the faculty score the particular key assignment and upload them. And automatically you want to compile this data for the faculty. Okay, so immediately can tell this is white color is comfort zone, this green color. In this particular example, it seems to indicate that the faculty teaching can meet the course outcome 1, outcome 2, and do really well for course outcome 3. Okay, so they're only at the course level, how well the teaching is taking place and how well learning taking place respect the course outcome. But what does it do to a student outcome? And the performance indicator. Okay, so since the mapping of the course outcome also related to the performance indicator, so this is the data that we use to quantify whether teaching in the class for that class has anything to do with the program later on. It does align with the course outcome with performance indicator, then the teaching, we want it to align with the program actual objective eventually. So we quantify them whether they're meeting the PI performance indicator. In this particular course, it only satisfies the student outcome 1 by using for 3 different PI 1, PI 1, 2, 1, 3, and 1, 4. And these are the corresponding EMU vector. And based on this, PI 1, 4, we can roll up this data later to the chair office for further evaluations. Remember, the assessment information flow down. Evaluation information flow up. So with this information right now creating the FCAR level, at the course level, and the faculty level. So faculty level, remember, they focus more on the learning management system. In this case, the OS also allow them to type in the teaching into the assessment they're going to use later. So when it comes to assessment, it's actually more into the chair office. This is the additional dimensions that our system learning management system do not have, which we need in order for us to track whether our OBE implementations are really meeting the target that we want to have. Now, when it comes to program chair office, there are many features allow the chair to go through the assessments. Now, remember the program assessment and program evaluations. When it comes to program assessments, okay, we are looking into, okay, let's look into one. Let's say the E department. Okay, let's take this department for this program, for example, EC program for this term. Okay, this is a program education objective defined by the program. Every program will be different. And then this will be the corresponding student outcome and mandated by the accreditation agents. So in this case, the student outcome 1 to 7. How are these outcomes related to the program education objective? Remember, the evaluation information flow up. Eventually, we only measure the PI. From the PI, we measure the SO. Eventually, we are trying to address how well are we meeting our program objective. And these are the mapping that we did know. Okay. When you have that, then we go down one level assessment. Now we're looking into, for this particular SO1, what will be a corresponding PI, performance indicator. Now, performance indicator in general are uniquely defined per program. It should be the same. If you find that you have two programs that have identical performance indicator, maybe pretty much telling other people that these two programs have no distinctions, then it might just well be one department. So in general, your SO are same for all engineering programs. The performance indicator in general are different. That you need to define. Of course, it's not rubric for this SO. If you look at the rubric format, okay, this is eventually what we want. For each PI that they define, how to quantify that this PI, the student performance work, are actually meeting E, excellent. Are they meeting A, adequate? What do you mean by M, minimum? And what do you mean by O, unsatisfactory? I mentioned earlier that EAMU is a score-based rubric. In this case, we actually put in the word-based rubric that allow you to define the rubric in word format so that the faculty have a better idea when they say E, excellent, this is basically what it meant by that. When they say adequate, this is basically what it meant by that. Okay, so it's more precise way of doing the assessment of student work for each of the performance indicator. Okay. Now, once you have that, this is where we measure. Okay, we mentioned earlier that each of your program, when you do your assessment design, evaluation design, okay, you should always start from the curriculum mapping matrix from here. So design this matrix, it looks easy, but in reality, it's very time consuming and it requires a lot of thought because it involves stuff. Remember, it's design down or backward design. Okay, you based on what would be your program objective try to achieve. There's a text here. Okay, they say they still have echo, but I don't hear an echo from my end. Better now? The source of possible source of Wi-Fi. Maribel, is it better now for the audio? Okay. Okay. Let me move on. Hopefully this better. Okay. Now, with your first step for your assessment is your curriculum design. In this curriculum design, we mentioned earlier, it starts from the introductory, reinforced, and mastery level courses. This is your step 1 for your assessment. It will also be the last step of your assessment also. This first step, it gives you an overall view of your strength and weaknesses of your program. Okay, so at the end of it, when you collect all the data for all these courses for each of the PI, They do the evaluation accordingly. At the end, you also come back to this matrix and see where is the potential weakness, where is potential strength, and where else can be improved, and how else can this IRM be rearranged for a better curriculum design. So I start from here. At the end, you also start right at this point. Okay. So that's for the assessment. When it comes to evaluations, there are many features. So we'll go through some of them, not all of them. So in particular, go to the performance indicator evaluation first. So let's pick one. Now, here, remember, we are performing the PI evaluations, not SO evaluation right away. So for PI evaluations, so these are all the SO. So if you select one of them, for example, see for this particular SO student outcome, you have like PI 11, 12, 13, and 14. For each of them, these are the results that roll out from the FCAR every courses, or rather designated courses associated with PI 11. Let's pick one, for example, this one. So let's move into the PI. This will correspond PPG table. So in this case, you can see that 351, 358, these two courses, that's mapping into this PI 11, the teaching. So you can tell the PI 351 is reinforced level courses, and 358 would be mass level courses. Then they're weighted differently. Mass level weighted 5, reinforced weighted 2. Introductory weighted as 1. So based on this, we compute all the EMU vector from the class. We compute based on the weighting factor to figure out what the overall PI average for this particular PI 11. In fact, this is the main reason why we're using the FCAS SMR, because based on the score base, doesn't matter if you're using word, event equivalent to score, it allows us to automate the performance indicator and roll information from a low level to a top level to give us some indications whether we have an issue. Now, green in general means that you exceed the expectations. Red is problematic, yellow is concern, white will be meeting your comfort zone. But it's only indications. It's not necessarily the ultimate. Eventually, your group had to sit down as a reviewer and discuss whether all this color flag makes sense. Because if it's all green, doesn't mean they're meeting the flag, may not necessarily be. If it's all green, it may just mean that you are, as a group, as a program, you are too easy to the students. So if it's all green, may not necessarily be good either. If it's all red, what does it mean? Does it mean that you're not meeting your target? No, it could very well mean that your program are way too tough on all the students. So as a result, this color flag is only as an indicator, though not the deciding factor. So as a group, you need to figure out all this color flag, what does it mean to your program? Okay, so you need to define, okay, as a group, as a team for your program, and how well can you use this color flag to help you make the decision at the end. But at the end of it, we're only making decision like it is exceeding expectations for this PI11 or below expectations. Okay, that's basically what we're looking for. Once the performance indicator is defined, see, as you can see here, this SO1, okay, you have like 4 different PI, and all this data eventually roll up to the very top. They give us the overall average very top. Okay, and then you have review for every PI. Then this information goes to the top. Then you have information at the top. You can decide later whether you're meeting your SO1, whether you exceeding or meeting or below your expectation at the end. So that's for PI evaluations. Let's go to the SO evaluations. Spring 21, EC department. So in this case, so those data for PI evaluations will automatically flow into this other SO from other courses. And let's pick one of this. Okay, in fact, we went through this. Let's pick one of this and go into it. Now at the SO level, you see things something slightly different. Now you're looking at the aggregate data from all the PI, PI11, PI12, PI13, PI14. Earlier, when we do the PI evaluation, we're looking at these two courses. Now for SO, all these courses, PI11, PI12, 1, 2, and 4, they roll up to the very top to your SO. So this is where you make a judgment call for all these courses that contributions to the SO aggregately together. Okay, are you meeting your target? Okay, so from here you can see that you have introductory level courses, reinforced level courses, and master level courses. Okay. And overall, for this particular example, you can see that the overall aggregate effect will be 4.43. Turned to be pretty good. Remember, the color flag is only an indicator. Okay, at the end, the average, as a group, we still look into it and see what are the issues. Based on last practice of so many years, we found that, especially for the last class, or many classes they need a judgment call, we tend to focus more on those that yellow and red. Okay, white and green, we tend to let it go. For yellow and red, we tend to drill further down and see what are the issues. Okay, this is where you activate the edit mode and then go further down into the particular F card and look into the particular key assignment and see why exactly this one is causing a yellow. Okay, because the faculty give for end of term reflections, so it gives you indication what's actually going on or taking place in the class. So that's why we need to have the justification at the end. We also want to have a reflection of the course delivery at the end of term in the F card. It will speed up or simplify your entire evaluation process in this manner. So at the end, so this is the report that you generated. For every PI 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, and color coded, now we know that we are exceeding expectation for all 4 of them. Okay, if you notice that this is yellow, okay, green makes sense to exceed expectation. But yellow, in this case, we also classify them as meeting expectations. Okay, because there's some reason, we actually dig further down into it and feel what are the reasons. Okay, in this case, the unsatisfactory score are due to no submissions. There's no submissions, okay, because the student just somehow refused to submit or miss a deadline. Okay, so that is a practice for this program that they don't accept late homework, and that's why it's causing this issue. But it's really indicating that the teaching is not doing its job. In this case, it's not. Okay, that's why we just said, okay, we still meet the expectations, even it's yellow. But when it comes to OBE, okay, OBE did mention about expanded resources. If that's the case, you want to look into is the practice of time-based that you want them to be submitting your homework within some time frame. Exactly, if you miss that, they're not allowed to submit. This really makes sense. So that's where the OBE practice comes in. But as far as the assessment is concerned, whatever rules that you created, okay, based on your OBE implementations, once you define those, they become your teaching culture, your department policy. Once you're consistent, then the toolset only capture data. Then they analyze them accordingly and see that it makes sense to you. As a minimum, we actually automate the data collections, data compilations. All you need to focus on evaluations. That's what this toolset is for, OS. That's what we need. Now, based on this, I want to show you another thing is, now remember, we're still on the program level evaluations. We went through student outcome, and then went through the PI evaluations, student evaluations. Let's look into exactly what we try to get out of it. Okay, exact summary. Let's look into one of them. This is what we're looking for at the end. Okay, let's say, for example, for this particular EC program, okay, we're looking into the student outcome executive summary as a brief report that we collected. So for all the student outcome SO1 to SO7, okay, you can see that we have the score value, the row up from the very bottom to the top. In fact, on the right-hand side, classify them according to color coded also. Median expectation, below expectation is red. Okay, median expectation, median expectations. Okay, is there a question on the floor? I'm hearing echo. We good? Okay. So these are the top level executive report that we want. Now, if you want to drill down further, we could. Okay, let's drill down further on the detailed SO and PI executive summary report. Remember this SO report, very top level. We drill down at one level lower. Okay, this report will show you exactly for the decision outcome 1, okay, the overall discussions. Okay, it also show you what will be corresponding PI 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, and what are the results for each of the PI. And at the end, you have a summary report for the SO. So that will be the SO and PI exact summary. If you want to do that even further, you could. So this would be the corresponding SO. I think there's one question here, right? Okay. Not really a question yet. Okay. Okay, so this will be the corresponding PBT table that roll up for each of the SO and PI, for every one of them. Now, the nice thing is this one here allows you to generate the report. Okay, you can generate a report, and at the end you compile them, they become part of your self-study for your accreditations. Now, if you want to drill down even further, okay, this one shows the overall for every course. Okay. Then what are the reflections written by the faculty or the instructor, and what are the action items suggested by them. Okay, for example, in this course, these are the reflections, and this will be corresponding action item being suggested by the instructor, and who will be the owner, and will be the expected closing date. Okay. So this report will give an indication of how well your program allow you to close the loop at the cost level, not a program level, at a cost level. So far, what I'm showing you is only at the cost level and closing the loop for this. Okay. Now, in the, okay, you can also, there are many other things. Let's say, for example, program task. There's no data. There's no program task. Now, remember what I showed you earlier, the action item is closing only at the cost level. If there's any program level, okay, then at the FCAR assessment evaluation process, you can elevate at the cost level to the program level, then he'll show up here. Okay. But let me show you for the My Community how they actually work. My Community, okay, you can create any group of committee that you want. Okay, so here, for example, we have a group called EC Committee, Curriculum Committee. So inside here is basically have a depository for the committee to keep all the work. They also have a task list. These are task lists that when it comes to evaluations, the evaluation assign a specific task to this committee, then he will show up here currently. So I said 30 minutes. So if no question, I'll move on. Okay, here you can see that these are the assigned tasks. Okay, and then what priority, assigned to whom, okay, by whom, what's the status, if it's open or closed, and what a history. Okay. So then now this one here will showcase, you can print them out, you can showcase as how well you're closing the loop for improvement at the program level. So remember, when you're closing the loop, the cost level closing the loop for improvement. They're also closing the loop at the program level for improvement. So program task, this one showing you here is closing the loop at the program level. At time, we also want to track all the meeting. Okay, these are all the meeting. Okay, you have evidence of who organized the meeting, exactly what discussed in the meeting. Okay, we just pick one for example. Okay, so these are the meeting minute. Okay, what being discussed. Okay, then you can print them out, export them, and attach them as a part of evidence when the evaluator would visit and look into your program and ask for all this evidence, how well you close the loop at program level, at the task level, and how do you track all this information. So that's what this is for. Let's go to chair level. Let's go to student advising. Student advising is one of the key components. Okay, inside here, okay, I'm going to show one for student SO evaluations. Now, no matter what you do for your OBE implementations or your accreditation process, okay, even though for accreditation process, we're looking for program accreditations. But program accreditation is only a process that allows you to engage into a continual improvement for teaching delivery and also engaging the student learning. Eventually, we want to ask, how do we know student learning meeting the student outcome that we wanted to have? Now, this is where this particular set of the outcome comes in. We're actually tracking each of the students. Okay, for every student, okay, let's say these are the student outcome they have. Now, students have access to this data themselves, okay, on the student side. So students will know exactly how well they measure up against each of the student outcomes that the program defined for them. Okay, take this particular example, okay, and for these students, for this student outcome SO1, okay, he's meeting for term 4 2018 all the way to spring 2021 for so many terms. Okay, this will be his performance track record and for different terms for different SO and his overall summary. If you want to find exactly more detail what's going on inside, let's pick this up for example. Then you can drill further down into the students, okay, and see exactly for this SO2, okay, for this PI, different PI, okay, since they have yellow, which are concerned area, they can really want to take a look and see what's going on. So this is actually conducted by the class called professional seminar the student take. Okay, he's at the final report that he is submitting, he only meeting M. So maybe it's time for the call for action and looking to see why it's only seems doing so well for the rest of them, except this one. Then maybe you can dig into the particular assignment and see exactly what you have done. So we use this part here as part of our advising. So the student have a chance to look into this one first ahead of time before they come to advising. Then we actually ask them to write a summary report of what they see in the strengths and weaknesses for each of the student outcome that we want them to achieve, and come up with an action plan for the course selections for next semester. Then during system advising, the faculty look into their own assessment and then make a judgment call and see whether their own assessment is accurate or not accurate. And then that way, we actually use the information to quantify student lifelong learning ability. And that's what we're doing it also. So that's for student advising. We use this information for this purpose. Now there are many other features for this, which do not have time to go through it. Maybe I can cover some of the survey. Now when it comes to survey, okay, which is part of the Toolset for indirect assessments. When it comes to survey, eval tool can create any type of survey you want. Okay. Create a new survey, for example. You can have course assessment survey report, or general survey, employer survey, a peer review survey. Okay, just pick one, for example, let's call it a survey. Let's click. Then you can define which are the programs you want it to be included in the survey. Now for course-based survey, you can choose what are the links you want faculty to have. Here we pre-populate some of the standard questionnaire. You can change them as you wish. So designing a survey is not something simple. You need to give a lot of thought to figure out exactly what you try to achieve out of it. Okay, so I think that will be the extent I want to cover for the survey for indirect assessments. So what we went through today, okay, we went through the Learning Management System 3.0, okay, which I call the Outcome Assessment System. It built on top of a learning management system they currently have. Okay, they focus not only on your basic learning feature for assignment, lessons, but also on the advanced features such as the Zoom, the video streaming, the content authoring, and the virtual classroom. But more important is the assessment process framework to allow your faculty to engage into planning and the teaching delivery. At the end of the term, you collect the data for analysis. So that would be the FCA assessment method. Okay, with those faculty, the FCA data at the faculty level, course level, and those information will automatically flow up to the top to the chair level. That's where all the OS features reside. Okay, then the chair level or so-called program director will call meeting on a regular time interval and assess whether each of the PI met from based on the data. And those data will further roll up to the top of the SO. Now, there's still quite a bit of information covered here that when it comes to assessment, we're certainly looking into the assessment process. We're assuming that you have an outcome assessed OBE implementation, that process they want to implement. Based on that, the key thing is line up your accreditation process with the OBE teaching philosophy. Okay. Then on that, this toolset comes in to help you collect the data, analyze the data, and let you know exactly where you stand with your program, not only meeting the accreditations, but also meeting your teaching delivery. Okay. One of the things that we need to show is in the faculty office, there's something called the summative evaluations and formative evaluation, both. They allow faculty real-time information that the teaching in the FCA and gauge whether and how well the teaching really is. So that pretty much covers the entire essence of OAS. Okay, so let me open up the floor and see if any more questions from the floor that I can address. Or is there more thing that you want to see? I think I pretty much cover all the essence of OAS. I don't see any more questions. There's no question coming in. I think we'll give a couple more minutes. If there's no questions, I could certainly conclude my presentation here. Okay, if the question, I can show you more. Now, this part will be all the training manual online. They can look into it. Okay. I think we are good. If no questions, I think I'd like to conclude my talk at this time. I'll wait here for another 5 more minutes or so and then see if no questions.